So this is not really a tutorial that gets really in the weeds on each tool that we're going to talk about. It's more just to show you what tools we use the most often and then help you find better tutorials that are already developed for each tool. So right off the bat, the help tab in this program is really good. So here's a link to the manual online, and then it's already got a lot of built-in tutorials that are really handy. One of the first things I do when I open this up, so you'll notice this rectangle here, this is your page, your work area, and then you'll notice this box up here. So if you select an object, it's got the size of the object, and then it's got different units that are available. So one of the first things I do is go to Document Properties and select the units that I want to use in these two spots, and then I set the page size. Just X out of that. There's no save button. The left sidebar here, this tool is for selecting different objects. You can also highlight multiple objects. This is a node tool, so with this being a vector graphics editor, you can change things from rasters to vector images, and then you get these nodes, and it just gives you more options to edit. There's some general drawing tools, general line drawing tools, a text editor for adding in text. You've got this measuring tool is pretty handy. So if you want to know the measurement of some part of an object. So the Object tab, this has some useful tools on it. The fill and stroke tool is something that we use quite a bit. So if you selected this object, it's got the inside is called the fill and the outline is called the stroke. So if you select an object and go to fill, you can turn off the fill. You can do some other gradient type things with the fill. Or I just have a solid and you can change the colors of the fill. If you get a stroke, now you're changing the outline. And so, like we went back to stroke style, you can change what the outline looks like, for example. A lot of what we use it for here is to change the stroke thickness. The laser wants to see a really small line, and that helps it know it's a vector cut. So you can change the line thickness or the line width. So it looks like it disappeared, but if you zoom in, it's still there. It's just really tiny. So that is fill and stroke. Group and ungroup is another handy tool to use. So if you highlighted multiple, I don't know why that's not highlighting. Oh, it's got, there we go. So if you highlight multiple objects and choose group, now it treats it as one object. And so you just have to click it once and it's able to be manipulated from there. And then you can also ungroup things like that. Probably ungroup these two also. Yeah. Here's a good example of what a vector graphics editor like. So Inkscape and then like Adobe Illustrator are both vector graphics editors. And so once you ungroup things, you can manipulate them in different ways. So flip, rotate, bring to the front. So under the Object tab, they're talking about these tools right here, which are also displayed on this toolbar. So say you had something selected, then you can flip it or rotate it. And then there's also, this is pretty handy. So that's on, so the text is on top of the circle, but you could send the text to the bottom. That's useful in some cases. Align and distribute. So also in the Object tab is Align and Distribute. The shortcut keys are here. They're also at the laser desk. So Control-Shift-A brings up the Align and Distribute tab. So let's say that we had objects kind of in a random order like that. You can highlight the whole group, and then this is a key feature, this relative to. So relative to the last thing selected, or the first thing selected, or the biggest or smallest object in the grouping. Relative to the page is mostly what we use it for. In this case, we can do relative to the biggest object, and then there's other things that you can do. So relative to the biggest object, I want to center vertically, or I can center horizontally, or I can distribute, things evenly in that selection. Import. So let's import a raster image. I've got this PNG of the Inkscape logo. So we'll import that. So if you zoom in, you can tell that it's pixelated if you zoom in far enough. So it's just a basic, JPEG, Bitmap, TIFF, PNG. Those are all raster images. If you right-click and do Trace Bitmap, then you've got a way or a tool to change it into a vector graphic. So now you can basically, you still have the original bitmap type image, but then you also now have a vector file where it's made up with nodes, and then you can, again, do different things with it. So like we could fill and change the color. And then there's also a way that you can get different layers, so you can manipulate the layers. Let's import Save As. It's pretty handy. Normally we use SVG files, but you can choose a lot of different other types of files. PDF is another one that we use quite a bit with the laser. The Path tab. A lot of good tools on this one. So like Object to Path. Let's go down here. So if we were to use the square or rectangle drawing tool, we would get something like just a basic rectangle. And if you click on it, down here it says rectangle in layer 1. But if we do Object to Path, which is under the object to Path, so it's taking it from what Inkscape recognizes as a normal rectangle from the drawing tools, and now it turns it into a path. So before we do that, if we were to double click on this, you get these 3 dots, and that allows you to change a couple of things on the rectangle. But now that it's a path, and you double click on it, you get these 4 dots instead. So here, double click, you just get the 3 dots. Here, now it's not really, it doesn't recognize it as a rectangle anymore. It recognizes it as a path. And so you can do different things with the object now. If you do Stroke to Path, this tool right here, to the same rectangle, then you would get out of there. You would get this. And you can even ungroup that. And now it's 2 different objects. So Trace Bitmap we talked about, but what I didn't cover is that, so this is the initial raster image that I started with. If you right click, trace, I had a leftover extra one on there. So this is the bitmap. Right click on the bitmap and trace bitmap. What I didn't really talk about was that there are a lot of options that you can, change in this left toolbar. So we could make this, and it kind of depends on the image. So I won't say that there's any right or wrong set of numbers that will fit in here, but you can change things around and then hit update, and you can kind of get a preview of what it's going to look like. When you're satisfied with what you like, then you can hit OK and close this window out, and then you can drag off your vector image. And so these, I've already done a lot of different trace bitmaps on this one image, and these are just different results that you can get with different settings in that trace bitmap tool. And like I say, there's a whole 15-minute tutorial online just over the trace bitmap tool. And check our description in this video for a link to that tutorial. Merging objects. So all of these functions here. So if you started with the same image and you did a union, so a path union, then it would take these two different objects. These are two different objects, and it combines it into one object. Similarly, you can see how it cut away the difference. And this one matters which one's on top. So if you did that, for example, and then path difference, so see, it matters which one's on top for those tools, or some of those tools. So you can see different things that, or different effects that you can get with those different tools. Combine and break apart are really handy. Put on path, this is handy sometimes if you had this piece of text and you wanted to put it on a curve or put it on a different path. You could do text, put on path, and then you click on the object once and then click on it one more time. These arrows change, and now you can rotate objects. So if I clicked on this one and then clicked on it one more time, the arrows here rotate things. Take a look at the links in the description of this video to find links to other more in-depth tutorial videos on each one of these features.